Hello demigods, monsters, and gods alike. Welcome to the Olympus Report. Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, the second book in the Percy Jackson series. Don't want to reread it? Well, here's everything you need to know. Before we jump in it, let's recap some of the important events in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Percy returned the lightning bolt to Zeus, and Luke was revealed to be behind the whole plot. Luke is working for the Titan Lord Kronos, but Zeus refuses to believe it. Percy returned to Camp a Hero and went home with his mom at the end of the summer, and Grover finally got his searcher license to look for the lost god of the wild, Pan. Okay, now let's jump into the Sea of Monsters. The book starts with Percy having a dream about Grover. Grover is running for his life and he keeps screaming, "I need to warn them, I need to warn them." And then he ducks into a wedding boutique shop to take cover. Then Percy wakes up. Percy's especially worried about this dream because when demigods have dreams, they're often seeing events in real life. So now Percy is super worried about Grover. But Percy has to put it to the side for now because in the meantime, he's going to be late for his last day of school. And Percy finally made it through a school year without anything weird happening or being expelled. Just one more day and then he gets to go to Camp Half-Blood, his favorite place. However, when Percy mentions how excited he is to return to camp to his mom seems a little hesitant. When Percy questions her, she says that she received a message from Chiron, the camp director, and a centaur, and Chiron thinks they need to delay Percy's return to camp for a little while, as the camp is not safe. Percy doesn't understand how this could be because Camp Half-Blood is the safest place on Earth for demigods, but his mom says they'll talk about it after school. As Percy's getting ready to leave, he swears he saw someone outside his bedroom window, but they vanish before he can see who it is, so he dismisses it. At school, we're introduced to Percy's new friend Tyson. Tyson is homeless and a part of Percy's school, Merryweather Prep, as part of a program that helps homeless youth. Percy describes Tyson as rough-looking and very tall, but can't really make out his face, as he can't seem to bring himself to look past his crooked teeth. At school, Percy is still really bothered about his dream about Grover, and he wishes his best friend Annabeth were there to talk about it with him, because she would know what to do. As Percy thinks about this, he looks at a picture of Annabeth that she sent to him from her trip to Washington with her family. Annabeth decided to give her family another chance after running away when she was very young. As Percy's looking at the picture, the school bully Sloane comes up and takes it. Sloane is with two new kids that are huge. Sloane says that they will be transferring into the school next year. Percy gets the picture back, but Sloane promises that he's going to make Percy pay in gym class. In gym class, they will be playing dodgeball, and for some reason, Tyson keeps saying that the two new kids smell funny. Percy and Tyson are on a team versus Sloane and his new goons. Very soon, the game becomes deadly, and Percy figures out what's going on with the two new kids. They're in fact 8-foot giant monsters, who are obscured by the mist, a magical aura that keeps mortals from seeing the divine part of the world. The giants start throwing flaming cannonballs, and Percy realizes he's now fighting for his life. Typical for Percy. Percy brings out his sword Riptide, but is almost struck by a flaming cannonball when Tyson blocks the shot. Percy thinks surely Tyson must be dead, as no mortal could have survived that, but in fact, Tyson is completely unharmed. Percy and Tyson are able to take down one giant, but things seem very hopeless until Annabeth appears out of nowhere, literally, and stabs one of the giants in the back. She takes off her Yankees cap of invisibility. Turns out it was Annabeth that Percy saw outside his window this morning, and the three of them are able to escape, but not before the school is set on fire. Percy figures he's not going to be invited back to this school next year, so much for his good record. Outside, Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson regroup, and for some reason, Annabeth seems to have an issue with Tyson. Percy is shocked that Tyson isn't burnt from his run-in with the flaming cannonball, but Annabeth doesn't seem surprised at all. Annabeth Annabeth asks if Percy's been having any weird dreams, to which he replies with his dream of Grover, but Annabeth seems shocked by this as this isn't what she was referring to. See, Annabeth has been having dreams about Camp Half-Blood. Afterwards, they explain Greek gods and the divine world to Tyson, but for some reason, Tyson doesn't seem shocked by it at all. Annabeth is shocked that Percy hasn't been attacked by monsters all year, up until today. But when she looks at Tyson, she realizes that this makes sense. But before she can explain what she means, the cops show up. They decide to take a taxi to Camp Half-Blood. Annabeth doesn't want to bring Tyson, but Percy refuses to leave him behind, so eventually Annabeth relents. They take a taxi driven by the Grey Sisters, 3 supernatural sisters, Anger, Tempest, and Wasp, that are insane and have one eye that they all share between them. Oh, and they drive like 1,000 miles per hour. The Grey Sisters say they have information that Percy seeks. They refuse to tell him, but finally do when Percy threatens to drop their eye out the window. They tell him that they know the location that he seeks and tells him a bunch of numbers, 30, 31, 75, and 12. Percy is super confused by this, but before he can get more information, they arrive at Camp Half-Blood, and it's under attack. 2 mechanical bulls are wreaking havoc all around camp. Percy and Annabeth jump into action and go to help Clarice, who is struggling. Percy tells Tyson to stay back, but Annabeth insists that they need him. The battle commences, and Percy finds himself in trouble, and Annabeth screams at Tyson to help him, but for some reason, Tyson can't enter camp. So Annabeth gives him permission to enter. Tyson jumps in front of an inferno to rescue Percy, and Percy thinks he's once again burnt to a crisp. But Tyson comes out unscathed. Tyson takes care of the bad cow, his words, and Clarice handles the other one. Clarice claims that she had it all under control the whole time, but finally relents and goes to take care of the injured campers. Afterwards, Annabeth finally insists to Percy that Percy really take a closer look at Tyson. Finally, Percy is able to look past Tyson's crooked teeth and sees one eye. Tyson is a Cyclops. Lots of Cyclops, in fact, grow up homeless and alone in big cities. And they're impervious to fire, which explains the flaming cannonball and the inferno that Tyson saved Percy from. They can also smell monsters, which explains why he knew something was up with the 2 goons at Merryweather Prep. Clarice comes back and insists that she needs help with the wounded, as she needs to go report to the camp director, Tantalus. This confuses Percy because the camp director is Chiron, not some guy named Tantalus, to which Clarice replies, "A lot of things have changed here at camp." Percy insists he wants to know what's going on, to which Clarice just points to Thalia's pine tree. Thalia was a Greek demigod, daughter of Zeus, who sacrificed herself so Annabeth, Grover, and Luke could make it to camp safely. Thalia unfortunately passed away, but Zeus turned her into a pine tree which oversees and protects camp. But when Percy looks to Thalia's pine tree, it's dying. It's been poisoned. As Percy travels through camp, he says there's an air of danger surrounding camp. Tyson, however, is enthralled and asks tons of questions. They meet up with Chiron at the big house, and Tyson is very happy to meet a pony. Chiron reveals how he's been fired from Camp Half-Blood, as the Olympians blame him for poisoning Thalia's pine tree. Chiron is of course not responsible, and he even reveals that the poison poisoning Thalia's tree is from Tartarus, meaning that Luke and Kronos are most likely behind the poisoning. With the pine tree dying, it means the magical border that protects camp is weakened. Before Chiron takes his leave from camp, he makes Annabeth swear on the river Styx, an oath-binding promise to protect Percy, as he's in great danger because of the great prophecy. Yet they still have not told Percy what this great prophecy is. Everyone then regroups for dinner in the dining pavilion. Here we meet Tantalus, the new camp director who was brought there by a very grumpy Mr. D. Tantalus is a spirit from the fields of punishment, whose punishment is that he can never eat or drink again. So food is constantly disappearing and running away from him. And Tantalus already has it out for Percy. Tantalus's first act as camp director is to bring back the very dangerous chariot race, and says in order to prepare, all campers are off from regular activities. Clarice is upset by this because patrol is more important now than ever with the camp border being weakened. Tantalus also gives Tyson a very hard time, threatening to have the camp hunt him down. But before this can happen, Tyson is claimed by none other than Poseidon. Percy has a new cabin mate and a half-brother. See, Cyclops are children of gods and nature spirits. Tyson is thrilled about this, but Percy is less thrilled and honestly a bit embarrassed and angry with his dad over the whole situation. And it's made worse by everyone making fun of him at camp. To try and cheer him up, Annabeth suggests that they team up for the chariot race. But Annabeth still isn't a fan of Tyson and constantly refers to him as a monster. And despite Percy being embarrassed by his brother, Tyson did save his life twice. This causes an argument between Annabeth and Percy, and they decide to split up for the chariot race, and Percy teams up with Tyson instead. In the meantime, Percy has his first Pegasus riding lesson. Percy isn't a fan of air travel, as Zeus is the god of the sky and Zeus kinda has it out for Percy. But Percy really likes the Pegasi because horses were actually made by Poseidon, so Percy can talk to them. Percy also continues to dream about Grover, where he keeps saying, it's here, he likes sheep. And finally, Grover makes contact with Percy. Turns out Grover created an empathy link with Percy, allowing him and Percy to share emotions and feelings. However, if Grover dies, Percy dies, and Grover is in some deep trouble. On his quest to look for Pan, he was drawn to a powerful nature smell that happened to be a trap by the Cyclops Polyphemus in the Sea of Monsters. And that strong nature smell happens to be the legendary Golden Fleece. This is the reason why no satyr has ever come back from their search for Pan. It's because they all get trapped. So Polyphemus has Grover, but Polyphemus doesn't see too well, and Grover has convinced him that Grover is actually a lady Cyclops and convinced Polyphemus to marry him in 2 weeks. So now Percy is on a deadline to rescue his friend. The next morning, Percy tells all of this to Annabeth, but she thinks it's just a trick to distract her from the chariot race. But before Percy can convince her, the race starts. Percy and Annabeth go head-to-head, and there's lots of trickery, but before the race can conclude, they are attacked by Stamalian birds, essentially killer pigeons. They manage to discombobulate the birds by blasting Dean Martin from Chiron's boombox, and the Apollo cabin was then able to shoot them down. In the chaos, a stunned Clarice is announced the winner of the race, and Tantalus decides to punish those who disrupted the race. Tantalus blames Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson as he says they disrupted the birds with their bad chariot driving. Their punishment? Kitchen duty and washing dishes. However, they have to wash the dishes with lava. This gives Percy and Annabeth time to talk and make up. Percy brings up his dream about Grover again, and Annabeth starts to believe him. Annabeth tells Percy about the Golden Fleece and how it's been lost for thousands of years. But if Grover really did discover it, this is the one thing that could save Thalia's pine tree, as it has intense healing abilities. This encourages Percy all the more to go rescue Grover. But Annabeth thinks it may be a trap, but Percy says, do they really have a choice? And Annabeth agrees, they don't. Annabeth brings up how dangerous it will be and that they will need to sail into the Sea of Monsters, otherwise known as the Bermuda Triangle to mortals. And they have to battle the Cyclops Polyphemus. Percy believes he's at an advantage being a son of the sea god, and they decide to ask Tantalus for a quest. They decide to ask him at dinner in front of everyone so he can't say no. Tantalus agrees, but he gives the quest to Clarice. Percy and Annabeth argue with them, and Tantalus reveals his backstory to scare them. Tantalus was a king beloved by the gods and was even invited to Mount Olympus to feast with the gods. But he got a little too greedy and tried to steal ambrosia, so the gods banished him. As revenge, Tantalus invited the gods over for dinner and fed them his own children. And thus, the punishment to Tantalus from the gods was never to be able to eat again. Clarice then goes to the oracle to receive her quest. Percy is really down that night and decides to sneak out for a late night walk on the beach. As Percy sits on the beach, he runs into the god of travelers, thieves, and merchants, Hermes, and his 2 rat-loving snakes, George and Martha. Hermes encourages Percy to go on the quest anyway, even though he doesn't have permission, and gives him 2 presents. The first being a thermos that when opened produces powerful winds. The second is a bottle of vitamins that he says are very powerful and to only take in dire circumstances. See, the reason Hermes is doing all this isn't because he wants Percy to rescue Grover. Well, he does, but the more important thing is he wants Percy to try and rescue Luke. Maybe Percy can talk some sense into Luke, as if you remember, Hermes is Luke's father. Hermes has packed a bag for Percy and points to a cruise ship out on the horizon and says his father Poseidon will help him reach it. Hermes then takes his leave. Annabeth and Tyson then rush to Percy on the beach thinking he's in trouble, but it turns out they were just tricked by Hermes to get all three of them together. Percy then explains his chat with Hermes. Annabeth thinks they should go and Percy concedes and asks his father for help. 3 hippocampi, basically horse mermaids, then show up on shore and take them to the cruise ship. The cruise ship is called the Princess Andromeda. They climb aboard. Once they climb aboard the cruise ship, Tyson immediately smells something bad. If you remember from before, Cyclops can smell monsters. But despite this, they still find a room for the night. Percy dreams of Tartarus and Kronos, and also sees Grover trapped on Polyphemus' island again. And Grover is running out of time. Polyphemus is getting impatient and insists that Grover marry him already. Percy needs to hurry. Percy wakes up and the three explore the cruise ship, and they very quickly realize that all the passengers are in some sort of trance. And the cruise ship is in fact filled with monsters. But not just any monsters, this is Luke's monster army. The cruise ship belongs to none other than Luke. But instead of leaving, they decide to find out what Luke is up to. Besides just monsters, they realize there are also other demigods on the ship that have sided with Luke, one of them being Chris Rodriguez. They find Luke and eavesdrop on his conversation. See, Cyclops have this amazing copycat ability, where they have super great hearing and can recreate the voices that they're hearing. They find out that Luke was indeed the one who poisoned Thalia's tree, but before they can find out more, they are captured. Turns out Luke has a spy at camp and has been keeping tabs on them all year. Annabeth confronts Luke and says, "How could you do this to Thalia? She was your best friend." To which Luke replies with, "How could you be traveling with a Cyclops? That's just as bad." Luke claims that the gods are using Percy and gets in Percy's head by telling him that Chiron doesn't even trust him. He hasn't told him the great prophecy, which is about Percy. But before Percy can think too much on this, they notice a golden sarcophagus in the room, and Luke reveals that it's holding Kronos, who is reviving little by little. See, Luke also seeks the golden fleece to speed up this process. Luke then orders them to be locked up, but on the way to the dungeon, they're able to overpower the guards and escape on a lifeboat, using the thermos from Hermes as kind of like a rocket launcher. As they travel across the sea, they contact Chiron with an iris message. They tell him all that has happened, and Chiron warns Percy of something, but Percy is unable to hear what Chiron is saying, as Chiron is staying with the party ponies, some relatives of him who are quite rowdy. And then the message ends. They then realize they're very close to Virginia Beach, and how can they tell this? Well, in fact, Percy has perfect bearings at sea. He can even tell exact coordinates. That's when they realize that the numbers given to Percy by the Grey Sisters are in fact coordinates to Polyphemus' island in the Sea of Monsters. Annabeth then leads them to a hideout that she says she used to use with Luke and Thalia. Tyson goes out to scout the area, and Percy and Annabeth have a chance to chat where they both agree that Luke let them go way too easily. Annabeth is about to reveal to Percy why she doesn't like Cyclops, but before she can, Tyson returns with donuts. Annabeth and Percy are really confused about this, and Tyson points to a shop called Monster Donuts. But before they can question this too much, they're attacked by a Hydra. Percy cuts off one of his heads, to which Annabeth screams, "No!" Since if you cut off a Hydra's head, 2 grow back, and a new monster donut chain pops up apparently. When all seems lost, all of a sudden a steam engine appears on the river, commanded by none other than Clarice and her undead army. See, being a daughter of Ares means she can control the dead soldiers of the losing side of war. So Clarice and her Confederate steamboat, the SS Brigham, blast the Hydra into 1,000,000 pieces. Clarice allows them on board, but not before calling them losers. Clarice mentions that they are in so much trouble back at camp, but Percy and Annabeth don't really care and tell Clarice about Luke, but Clarice seems unfazed and is more worried about the quest, saying that nothing is going to get in her way of stopping her from completing it. See, Clarice really wants to impress her father, as Ares really doesn't have too much respect for his daughters. He much prefers his sons, so Clarice wants to prove herself. That night, Percy once again dreams of Grover, where it is confirmed that Polyphemus does in fact have the Golden Fleece. Percy wakes up right as the SS Brigham is approaching the Sea of Monsters. As Percy approaches the deck, he overhears a conversation between Ares and Clarice, where Ares reprimands Clarice pretty badly. After this, Percy feels just a tad of sympathy for Clarice. Clarice is steering the ship between Charybdis and Scylla, which is the only way into the Sea of Monsters. See, Charybdis sucks up the sea, and Scylla plucks travelers right from their boat. But Clarice claims she can sail right between them and not get caught. But they are in fact caught in Charybdis' whirlpool. Annabeth asks Percy if he can control the sea, and Percy soon realizes for some reason he can't, and the ship is failing them. Tyson says the piston needs fixing, but the engine room is too hot for anyone other than Tyson. Percy doesn't want Tyson to go, but Tyson insists that he can do it and races down to the engine room. Tyson manages to fix the engine and they're able to escape the whirlpool, but not before a giant wave and debris are shot at them. Percy just manages to keep the ship from capsizing, but too much pressure has been placed on the hull. The ship is going to explode. And even worse, Scylla is coming for them. Percy tells Annabeth to abandon ship and he will go rescue Tyson. But before he can get to him, he's picked up by Scylla. He manages to jab her in the eye with Riptide and he's dropped. But as he's falling towards the SS Brigham, it explodes, with Tyson still on board. Annabeth manages to escape on a lifeboat and tries to use the thermos again, but it overheats and explodes. Percy hits the sea with a thud, a fall that would have killed anyone besides a son of the sea god, but Percy is knocked out. Percy is rescued by Annabeth and he wakes up on a makeshift raft. He asks about Tyson, to which Annabeth replies that she's so sorry. They also don't know what happened to Clarice. Percy knows exactly where he needs to go, but he's just too distraught to care. On top of just losing Tyson, they also now only have 24 hours to rescue Grover. Percy is upset that he was ever embarrassed by Tyson, and even Annabeth relents that she was wrong about the big guy. Percy finally questions Annabeth about the prophecy, to which she reveals a little bit. A child of the Big Three will decide the fate of Olympus at the age of 16. And currently there's only one child of the Big Three, Percy. Annabeth reveals this is the real reason why the Big Three decided not to have any more children, as they're just too afraid. Percy asks why they don't just kill him, and Annabeth replies, "I honestly don't know." As they continue to talk, they notice an island in the distance and set sail to take refuge. They're greeted by a lady, to which reveals that they're actually at a spa. Annabeth figures it can't hurt to look around, and the lady takes them over to the owner, Cece. The place is absolutely amazing. Cece, the owner, insists that Annabeth be taken away for a full makeover. Annabeth is hesitant to leave Percy, but Cece assures her that she is personally going to take care of Percy, as he needs way more work. Percy notices some guinea pigs in the corner, but doesn't question it, and him and Annabeth are separated. Cece shows Percy a mirror with a perfect version of himself in it, and Percy asks, "What's the catch?" And Cece claims there is none. He just has to drink this glass of water. Percy drinks, unfortunately, and instead of turning into the perfect version of himself, he turns into a guinea pig. Cece claims this is the true version of himself, as all men are pigs. Annabeth comes back, and despite Percy being a guinea pig, notices that Annabeth does look beautiful in a new way. Not saying that she wasn't beautiful before, but this was a new type of beautiful. Annabeth asks where Percy is, and Cece replies that he's just getting a treatment. Annabeth accepts this explanation and tells Cece how impressed she is with the library, and she also tells her about her dream of being an architect, to which Cece replies that she would make a better sorceress like herself. Annabeth questions this, and Cece tells her that she is a daughter of Hecate, the goddess of magic. Cece says that she should come study with her as she will be immortal. Annabeth finally realizes what's going on. Cece is the famous sorceress Xerxes, and she figures out that those guinea pigs in the corner are Percy. Annabeth decides to go along with Cece's plan in order to rescue Percy. She asks for a minute to say goodbye. Annabeth then rushes over to the cage and tries to figure out which one is Percy. But before she can, Annabeth runs out of time, and Cece comes back. Annabeth launches a surprise attack with her dagger. Cece laughs this off and tries to cast a spell on Annabeth, but it doesn't work. Annabeth reveals that she took one of Hermes' vitamins, which makes her impervious to magic. She then dumps the rest of them into the guinea pig cage, where they all eat the vitamins, and all of them turn back into humans, except the other guinea pigs were pirates, including the very famous Blackbeard. In all the chaos, Percy and Annabeth manage to escape. They steal the pirate ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, to which Percy realizes he can control with his mind, and wills it to move, and it does. Annabeth tells Percy that she's glad he's not a guinea pig anymore, to which Percy replies, "Me too," with a blush on his face. The two then sail on in the Sea of Monsters. Annabeth then finally reveals why she dislikes Cyclops so much. When her, Grover, Luke, and Thalia were on their way to Camp Half-Blood, Grover made a wrong turn and they ended up in a Cyclops den. The Cyclops used their power of impersonation to split them up, and Annabeth was the only one not caught. When she found the others, they were tied up and about to be eaten, and then the Cyclops taunted her in her father's voice. Annabeth was able to stab them in the foot and escape, but after that, Annabeth wanted nothing to do with Cyclops. And because of this detour, the other monsters chasing them were able to catch up to them, and the reason why Thalia had to sacrifice herself. Afterwards, Percy decides to go below deck for a nap. That night, Percy has a really strange dream. He's standing in front of Kronos' sarcophagus, but he's not alone. There's a girl standing next to him with short, spiky black hair. She goes to open the sarcophagus, and when she does, she screams, "This can't be." Percy then startles awake. Annabeth tells Percy that they'll soon be passing the Sirens' lair. Sirens use their songs to sing to people about what they want the most and then lure them to their deaths. Percy suggests wax in the ear, but Annabeth says that she wants to hear the siren song. She wants to know what she desires most in life. Percy thinks she's crazy, but agrees. So they tie Annabeth up on the ship, and Annabeth makes Percy promise not to cut her loose no matter what she says. But once Annabeth hears the song, she's desperate to get free. Percy can't stand looking at her in distress, so he turns away. But he soon realizes his mistake when he turns back and Annabeth has escaped, and she's swimming towards the sirens. Percy jumps after her, and when he touches her, he sees what Annabeth has seen. A beautiful city designed by Annabeth herself, and she's enjoying a picnic with those she loves the most. Her dad, mom, Luke, Thalia. Percy is almost overcome with this image as much as Annabeth, but he snaps out of it and, using the sea to his advantage, manages to get Annabeth back to the boat. Once they pass the sirens, Annabeth finally comes out of her trance. Annabeth admits that what she saw was her fatal flaw, hubris. Annabeth thinks she's able to do everything better than everyone else, including the gods. A fatal flaw can be deadly to a demigod, so Annabeth is glad that she's aware of it now. Afterwards, they realize they've come to an island, and Percy, with his perfect sea sense, confirms it. It's the coordinates that were given to him by the Grey Sisters. They have reached Polyphemus' island. As they explore the island, they very quickly find the Golden Fleece and a bunch of sheep. Percy cannot believe how easy this is, but as they get a little closer, they realize it's not as easy as they thought. The sheep are man-eaters, and they're guarding the fleece. But before they can come up with a plan for this, they see the lifeboat from the SS Brigham, so they decide to go check it out and then come up with a plan to rescue Grover first. When they get closer to the lifeboat, they hear someone yelling. They follow the voice and discover that it's Clarice. She has survived, but she's been captured and is hanging upside down above a pot. They quickly realize that Grover is there as well. Polyphemus wants to cook Clarice for his wedding feast. When Polyphemus states this though, Clarice opens her big mouth and says Grover isn't a bride, he's a satyr, blowing Grover's cover. But with Grover's quick thinking, he convinces the Cyclops not to eat him raw. Polyphemus agrees, but now he wants to marry Clarice. Polyphemus puts them back in the cave where he's been keeping Grover and covers it with a boulder and leaves until the wedding later on. Percy and Annabeth try and move the boulder, but no luck. They decide they need to trick Polyphemus. See, when Polyphemus comes back, he's going to herd his non-man-eating sheep into the cave to prepare those for the feast as well. So when he opens the cave, that's when Percy and Annabeth are going to sneak in. Annabeth uses her cap of invisibility and Percy hides under a sheep. The plan works and Percy is able to get inside. But before Polyphemus can close the cave again, Annabeth distracts him by pretending to be somebody called Nobody. See, this is the same trick that Odysseus used to trick the Cyclops the first time, so it's kind of a sore subject for him. Polyphemus then takes off after Annabeth, who is still invisible. Percy quickly rescues Grover and Clarice, but he's not fast enough. They hear Annabeth crying out in fear. They run out of the cave to see that Polyphemus has Annabeth upside down by her legs. They decide to attack together, but they're not fast enough. Before they can get to Annabeth, she's dropped and her body hits the ground and goes lifeless. They quickly realize they are no match for the Cyclops and try to escape back to the ship. But Polyphemus is too fast. Percy experiences a surge of anger and refuses to lose anyone else. He's able to defeat the Cyclops, but before he can kill him, Polyphemus breaks out in sobs and begs Percy for his life. Clarice and Grover insist that Percy just kill him, but Percy can't stop thinking about Tyson, and he decides to give Polyphemus a second chance. He makes Polyphemus promise that if Polyphemus lets him and his friends leave the island with the Golden Fleece, he won't kill him. Polyphemus agrees, so Percy lowers his sword, but Polyphemus goes to eat him. But before he can, a giant boulder is hurled at Polyphemus. Percy turns around and sees Tyson standing there. See, Tyson was pulled from the wreckage of the SS Brigham by the hippocampi, who had been following them since Long Island. Since then, Tyson has been looking for them. Percy is beyond happy to see his brother. Percy then asks Tyson to get the Golden Fleece because Tyson is a Cyclops and smells like Polyphemus, so the sheep won't eat him. They use the fleece to heal Annabeth from her horrible fall, but she's still pretty badly hurt, just not fatally hurt, so they need to get her out of there fast. Tyson leads the sheep away, but before they're able to get back to the Queen Anne's Revenge, Polyphemus is still alive, blocking their path. Percy and Tyson take on Polyphemus together while the others swim for the boat. Polyphemus accuses Tyson of being a traitor to his kind, but Tyson calls Polyphemus the traitor, and Tyson is going to be a hero. They're able to overpower Polyphemus, but Percy and Tyson can't find it in themselves to kill him, so they make a run for it after Tyson knocks him down. Using Polyphemus's lack of vision to their advantage, they swim for the ship, hoping that Polyphemus won't be able to find them in time. But with Clarice's big mouth, she screams insults at the Cyclops, alerting him to exactly where they are. Polyphemus throws a boulder, which sinks the ship. Thankfully, though, the hippocampi are still around and rescue them, which carry them to safety. Percy thanks the gods that all of them are okay, especially Annabeth, and then promptly passes out. The hippocampi take them to Miami, but they can't get too close to shore because of the mortals, so our heroes have to swim the rest of the way. On shore, they realize that 10 days have passed since they left camp, and they're running out of time. They need to get the golden fleece to Thalia's pine tree or it's going to die. Clarice freaks out that she is going to fail the quest and her father. Percy, who is maybe starting to understand Clarice a little bit better, rounds up all the money that they have left and gives it to Clarice to buy an airplane ticket back to New York. Percy conceives that this is her quest and she needs to finish it. Besides, he can't fly because Zeus would blast him out of the sky. Clarice hops in a cab and races away. This leaves Percy, Grover, and Annabeth to find another way home. But before they can, they're captured, once again by Luke's army. Luke then takes them back to the Princess Andromeda. Luke demands that they hand the fleece over, but Percy announces that it's already gone. Luke is shocked at first that they would trust Clarice, but then he's just downright angry and demands that his guards get his steed ready so he can meet Clarice at the airport. Percy then realizes he needs to distract Luke long enough for Clarice to make it on the plane. Percy accuses Luke of using them to do his dirty work. Luke let them escape so they could get the golden fleece and save Luke the trouble. While Percy is saying all of this, he uses his last drachma to open an iris message to Camp Half-Blood. Percy gets Luke to admit to everything, including poisoning Thalia's tree. However, Luke doesn't realize that all of camp can hear him. This clears Chiron's name and he can no longer be blamed for the poisoning. Mr. D concedes that Chiron is not responsible and reinstates him as camp director, and sends Tantalus back to the fields of punishment. Thank the gods. Luke is angry but doesn't really care. He's more upset that he can't use the golden fleece to speed up reviving Kronos, but he does reveal that one part of his plan did work. After Luke used the golden fleece on Kronos, he was gonna let Percy take it back to camp anyway. This completely confuses Percy. He doesn't understand why Luke would let him have the fleece. Luke announces now that Percy won't leave alive and calls his monster army into action. However, Percy quickly comes up with a plan and challenges Luke to a one-on-one. Percy goads Luke, calling him too scared to accept. So Luke, not wanting to look weak in front of his army, of course has to accept. Percy and Luke battle, exchanging blows. Percy jumps into the pool for an added boost in power and is able to knock Luke down for a bit, but Luke recovers fairly quickly. Percy realizes that he is no match for Luke and all seems lost, until the party ponies come to the rescue, aka the Centaurs, and leading them is none other than Chiron. Our heroes hop on the Centaurs and are able to escape. Percy isn't satisfied though. Luke is still alive and he still has Kronos in that sarcophagus. Chiron says that they didn't win, but they're gonna have to be happy with a draw for right now. Chiron and Percy then talk about the great prophecy on the way back, the one that states a child of the big three at 16 will decide the fates of Olympus. Percy asks if it's really about him, and Chiron says he doesn't know, but Kronos certainly thinks it's about him. So Percy needs to be careful, because now that Kronos knows that he can't convince Percy to come to his side, he has no reason to keep Percy alive. We also learn that Kronos is Chiron's father, and this is why the gods thought that Chiron poisoned Thalia's tree, because they thought maybe he was on his father's side. After the talk, everyone finally returns to Long Island, or more specifically, Camp Half-Blood. Clarice has placed the golden fleece on Thalia's pine tree, which is starting to heal. Clarice is honored and considered a hero, and Percy and Annabeth are forgotten, which Percy decides is actually for the better, considering they left camp without permission and should technically be expelled. Things at camp resume as normal, and maybe just a tiny bit, Clarice is coming around to considering Percy as a friend. Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson team up for the new chariot race since the last one didn't end too well. The night before the race, Percy is once again confronted by the god of thieves, merchants, and travelers, Hermes, and his two snakes, George and Martha. Percy tells Hermes that Luke is essentially lost, and he feels like Hermes abandoned him. Hermes replies that family is messy and the gods are often forced to make tough decisions, especially where family is concerned, and often act in an indiscreet way. Percy, who had also started to feel abandoned by his father this summer, realizes that his father was there for him in indirect ways. For example, sending the hippocampi to help him. Hermes thinks Percy may have actually helped Luke see the error of his ways, or at least started the process. Hermes then gives Percy a package and takes his leave. It's a letter from Poseidon, but all it says is, brace yourself. Percy is kept awake all night thinking about what the heck this could mean. But in the morning, he puts it to the side of his mind as he has a chariot race to win. Before the race begins, Tyson gives Percy a watch, and when Percy clicks the button, the watch expands into a shield, which is covered in designs of Percy and Tyson's adventures together. Percy is completely moved by this gesture. With the help of the shield, Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson are able to win the chariot race. At the end of the race, Percy announces that there's no way they could have won without the help of his little brother, Tyson. Percy isn't ashamed anymore and fully embraces Tyson, and now so does the rest of camp. Afterwards, things proceed as normal and Percy could not be happier. Percy gets a kiss on the cheek from Annabeth. Grover was staying the rest of the summer and Chiron worked things out with Percy's school, so they no longer blamed Percy for blowing up the gym and the cops have stopped looking for him. Percy calls his mom, who is furious that he just disappeared, but overall is just glad he's safe. However, not everything can stay perfect for long. Percy needs to say goodbye to Tyson. Tyson received a dream from Poseidon. Poseidon wants Tyson to come down to his palace and work in the forges to make weapons. Tyson wants to be able to make weapons that will keep Percy safe. Percy is sad, but he understands. The two exchange goodbyes and Tyson takes his leave. That night, Percy has dreams of Tyson arriving at Poseidon's palace safely, but he also has nightmares of Kronos. Percy is startled awake by Grover and can immediately tell that something is very wrong. Grover is gasping and can only get out she's just lying there. They meet Chiron outside and he asks Grover, is it true? And Grover says, I think it is. But before Percy can ask what's going on, Chiron takes his arm and drags him to Half-Blood Hill, where Thalia's pine tree is. Percy thinks that maybe something is wrong with the Golden Fleece, but the Golden Fleece is fine once they arrive. However, Percy sees Annabeth on the ground and thinks maybe she's been attacked, but Annabeth is fine too. But then Percy notices that Annabeth isn't the only one on the ground. There's another girl lying there. Percy doesn't recognize her but rushes to help. He can't understand why everyone is acting so scared and won't help this girl. Chiron then states that the fleece was too strong. It not only cured the poison, but it went further. Percy asks the girl for her name, to which she replies, I'm Thalia, daughter of Zeus. All of a sudden, Percy understands too well why Luke was going to let him take the fleece after Luke was done with it. It brought Thalia back to life. And now there are two children of the big three that the prophecy could be talking about. Whew. Well, there you have it, demigods. A recap of Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Did I miss anything important? Let me know in the comments below. And I promise the Titan's Curse won't take as long as the Sea of Monsters did, so look forward to that in the future. But until then, I'll be signing off. And remember, Half-Bloods, always stay safe.